We don't always catch the moment a family turns on someone. Sometimes it's quieter than that. A hand pauses midair. A smile stays up too long. A word meant to sound loving lands like a weight. Evelyn Harper walked into her mother's New Year's Eve party carrying that kind of quiet, the kind that comes from being the reliable one for too long. She appraised homes for a living, but what mattered here wasn't her job title. It was the way she'd learned to swallow disappointment until it felt normal. This is where she begins. The first thing I noticed when I stepped through my mother's front door was the smell of citrus cleaner and champagne, like she'd scrubbed the house just to prove nothing was wrong. The living room was packed, a few aunts, 2 uncles, cousins I only saw when there was a holiday meal and someone wanted a group photo. My mother, Margaret, moved between them like a hostess in a magazine. Perfect hair, perfect earrings, perfect laugh. "Evelyn," she called out, bright. "You made it." I leaned in for a quick hug. She patted my back twice. Not a squeeze, not a hold, just a pat, like checking off a list. Traffic was a mess. I offered, slipping my coat off. "You always work too much," she replied, like it was a joke she'd told 1,000 times and still expected applause. On the couch, my Aunt Denise lifted her glass toward me. "Look at you, Manhattan. Big job, big life." I smiled because I was trained to. "It's fine. It's just work." My mother drifted away before the smile could settle on her face. I watched her go and felt that old familiar thing in my chest, the one that always showed up at family gatherings. Not anger, not sadness, just a small, steady emptiness. Lily arrived 20 minutes later, like she was timing it. The front door opened and the room tilted toward her. That's the best way I can describe it. She came in wearing a white dress that was too fancy for a living room party and a coat that looked like it had never seen a rainy day. Her hair was glossy. Her lipstick was perfect. She carried a gift bag even though she never brought gifts. "Happy New Year." "Everyone," Lily sang out. My mother appeared instantly. Her face changed like someone turned on a warmer light. "My baby," she breathed and pulled Lily into a hug that actually lasted. Lily's eyes flicked to me over my mother's shoulder. A quick smile, small, sharp. "Evelyn," she greeted, like my name was something she'd tasted before and didn't like. "Lily." I kept it neutral. That was my specialty. She held up her left hand like it was an accident. The diamond caught the light and sent it bouncing across the ceiling. A cousin let out a squeal. My Aunt Denise leaned forward. "Oh my God, that ring!" Lily giggled. Connor wanted it to feel meaningful. My mother's eyes shined. "He takes such good care of you." I watched my mother say it. The way her voice softened. The way she didn't even realize she was doing it. I felt my jaw tighten and forced it loose. Someone turned the music up, a countdown playlist, the kind with glittery cover art and too much bass. My mother clapped her hands. "All right. Before we get too close to midnight, I have something for my girls." She disappeared into the kitchen. When she came back, she held 2 envelopes. One was thick, cream-colored, heavy cardstock. The other was thin. Guess which one had my name on it? She handed Lily the thick one first. Lily opened it immediately, not even pretending to wait. A little intake of breath, a delighted laugh. She angled the contents away from everyone else, but not enough. I caught a glimpse of glossy paper, a voucher, a reservation, something expensive. "Mom," Lily cooed. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," my mother replied. "After everything you've been through." Everything you've been through. Lily had been through a wedding planning phase and one long weekend where Connor's mother wasn't supportive enough. That was her hardship. Then my mother turned to me, smile still fixed, and pressed the thin envelope into my hand. "There you go," she said. "A little something." The paper felt flimsy, like it didn't want to be touched. I opened it right there, because everyone was watching, and that's what you do in this family. You perform gratitude. You don't ruin the mood. Inside were 3 crisp bills, $75 total, folded once, no card, no note, just money. Like she'd pulled it from an ATM on the way home and decided it was close enough. For a second, I couldn't hear the music anymore. I could still see my mother smiling, though, like this was normal, like this was fair. My Aunt Denise blinked and looked away fast. A cousin pretended to cough. Someone laughed too loudly at nothing. Lily leaned closer, her voice light. Well, that's practical. My fingers tightened around the bills. I kept my face smooth. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Thanks, I managed. That's thoughtful. My mother nodded, satisfied, and turned away like the transaction was complete. I stood there holding the cash and felt the old grief rise up behind my ribs. Not just for the money, for the message under it. The one I'd been receiving since my dad died, and my mother decided one daughter was worth saving and the other was simply useful. I slipped the bills back into the envelope and forced my mouth into a smile again. I'm going to call Grandma Dorothy, I said, keeping my tone even, just to wish her a happy new year. My mother's whole body went still. The room didn't notice, but I did. I noticed everything. It's what I do. And in that pause, before she spoke, I felt something shift inside me. A small, clean line drawn between what I'd been willing to accept and what I could no longer pretend didn't matter. We'll do that another time, my mother replied too quickly. She's probably asleep. It wasn't even midnight. My mother's smile didn't move, but something in her eyes did. She's asleep, Margaret repeated, softer this time. You can call her tomorrow. I slid my phone out anyway. Not fast, not dramatic. Just enough to make it clear I'd already decided. It'll be quick, I replied. I won't wake her. Lily let out a small laugh, the kind meant to smooth things over. Evelyn, you don't have to prove anything. I didn't look at her. My thumb hovered, then pressed. The ringtone filled the room. Too loud. Too clean. Margaret reached for my wrist and stopped herself halfway, like she'd touched a hot stove in her head. She dropped her hand back to her side and stared at the floor. Dorothy answered on the second ring. Hello? Sweetheart. Her voice was steady, alert, not sleepy at all. Happy New Year. Grandma, I said, keeping my eyes on my mother. I just wanted to thank you for what Dorothy asked. The room shifted, chairs creaked. Someone turned the music down. For the gift, I said. Margaret said it was from you. There was a pause, not confusion, calculation. I spoke to the bank weeks ago, Dorothy replied. They were supposed to confirm the transfer with you. Margaret's breath caught, loud enough that Lily glanced at her. Grandma! Lily jumped in, too quickly. You might be mixing things up. Dorothy ignored her. Evelyn, did they say anything about the house? I felt the floor tilt, just a little. They gave me an envelope. I answered. $75. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded with things no one wanted to name. That's not possible, Dorothy said. I authorized $3.2 million. The trust released it in full. It was for you, for your home. My mother's glass slipped from her fingers and hit the rug. Champagne soaked into the fibers, spreading like a stain no one could scrub out in time. Mom, Lily whispered. Sharp. Say something. Margaret lifted her head. Dorothy, you know how your memory's been. You shouldn't be discussing finances like this. My memory is fine, Dorothy replied. Cold now. I reviewed the documents myself. I looked at the thin envelope still in my hand. The bills inside felt lighter than air. We noticed how still everyone became then. We thought later. The way celebration drains out of a room faster than sound. Grandma, I said quietly, the bank never contacted me. Dorothy inhaled once. Slow. controlled. Then someone intercepted it. Margaret stepped forward. "Evelyn, let's not do this right now. You're upsetting everyone." I folded the envelope closed, slid it into my coat pocket. "I'm tired," I said. "I'm going to head out." Lily opened her mouth, then shut it again. Margaret followed me to the door. Her voice dropped. "You don't understand how hard this has been." I nodded, because that was easier than anything else. Outside, the air was cold and clean. Fireworks cracked somewhere in the distance. Midnight was close. I didn't feel angry yet, just clear. And that was new. I didn't drive straight home. I sat in the car for a few minutes instead, hands still on the wheel, engine off, listening to the leftover echo of fireworks somewhere far enough away to feel unreal. My phone buzzed once, then again. I flipped it face down without looking. Inside my coat pocket. The envelope bent when I leaned forward. I pulled it out and set it on the passenger seat like it might explain itself if I stared long enough. $75? I laughed once, short and dry, then stopped. The sound felt wrong in the quiet. By the time I got back to my apartment, the building's hallway smelled like someone's late dinner and old carpet. Normal. Comforting. I kicked my shoes off, dropped my bag, and stood there with my coat still on, staring at the wall like I'd forgotten what came next. Sleep didn't happen. At just after 7 the next morning, I was in my office in Manhattan, jacket still on, hair pulled back too tight. The city outside looked the same as it always did. Gray, busy, unimpressed. "Happy New Year?" Tom from the next office over muttered, lifting his coffee. "Yeah," I answered. "You too." I shut my door and pulled up my credit report. Not because I had proof, because my stomach wouldn't let it go. The number loaded first, low 500s. I stared at it, waiting for it to change. It didn't. My chest tightened. I scrolled. 5 credit cards. All in my name. All maxed. Balances that added up fast enough to make my fingers go cold. Statements attached. Hotels. Furniture. Jewelry. Things I'd never touched. I closed my eyes and leaned back. We noticed how still she got then. Not frozen. Focused. Like something had clicked into place. I opened the detailed report. Notification address. My mother's house. Of course. I printed the pages and stacked them neatly, even though my hands were shaking. Muscle memory. Order helps when your head won't. My phone lit up again. This time I answered. "Evelyn." My mother's voice slid through, soft and careful. "You left so suddenly. I needed air. You embarrassed me." I let that sit. Then, "My credit score is destroyed." Silence stretched. Not surprise, not denial. Something closer to annoyance. "You've always been dramatic." I swallowed. There are 5 cards opened under my name. The statements match Lily's trips, her furniture, her ring. That's not what this is about. It is for me. She sighed, long and practiced. "You don't need everything spelled out. Lily needed help. You're stronger. Stronger." The word landed heavy. "I'm at work." I said, "We'll talk later." She didn't argue. She never did when she thought time was on her side. After the call, I grabbed my coat and headed back out. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. My grandmother's building smelled like lemon polish and old books. Dorothy opened the door herself. She took one look at my face and stepped aside. "Come in." We sat at her small kitchen table. She poured tea with steady hands. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "Your mother's explanations stopped making sense." "They intercepted it," I replied. "Didn't they?" Dorothy nodded once. "I asked the bank for the records this morning." She slid a folder across the table. On the front, my name was printed in clean black letters. I didn't open it yet. I didn't need to. I already knew my life had been moved around without me. Dorothy waited while I opened the folder. She didn't rush me. She never did. That was one of the ways she'd always been different from my mother. She let things land. Inside were clean copies, bank headers, transaction dates, the kind of paperwork that doesn't care how anyone feels about it. Dorothy watched my face instead of the pages. I asked them to send everything. They hesitated. Then they complied. The first page showed the trust account. The second showed a distribution. My name printed neatly under beneficiary, a number large enough to blur for a second before it settled. $3.2 million. Released in full. Transferred out the next day. I felt something cold slide down my spine. They never told me. Dorothy's mouth pressed thin. They told the bank you were unavailable. Unavailable. Like I'd misplaced myself. I flipped to the next page. Another account. Also in my name. Opened weeks before the transfer. Notification address listed as my mother's house. So she created an account for me. I murmured. Without me. Yes. Dorothy replied. As trustee, she could. The word trustee echoed wrong in my head. It sounded smaller than it should. Too clean for what it covered. I kept reading. Lines of numbers. Dates. Routing details. All leading to the same place. Sentinel Title Company. My phone buzzed on the table. Lily's name flashed across the screen. I ignored it. Dorothy reached for the teapot and refilled my cup. There's more. She slid another sheet forward. A property record. Westport, Connecticut. Purchase price $2.6 million. Owners Evelyn Harper and Connor Blake. I stared until the letters stopped rearranging themselves. They bought a house. I said slowly. With my money. Dorothy nodded. Yes. And the credit cards. She hesitated. Just a fraction. That part wasn't the bank. I exhaled through my nose. That was my mother. Silence settled between us. Thick but steady. We noticed how methodical she became then. The way emotion stepped aside so the details could line up. I gathered the papers into a stack. Straightened the corners. My hands were calmer now. There's something else, Dorothy added. Look at the last page. I did. My name appeared again, this time next to a smaller line. Guarantor. I leaned back in the chair. The wood creaked. She tied me to the loan. I said, That's why my credit collapsed. Dorothy's voice dropped. She told me you'd approved it. I closed my eyes for a second, not long enough to feel anything fully. Lily's call went to voicemail. Another buzz followed. A text. Can we talk? Mom's upset. I slid the phone face down. Dorothy reached across the table and rested her hand over mine. Her skin was warm, solid. I wanted to fix something I ignored for too long, she said quietly. I didn't think she'd do this. I squeezed her hand once, then let go. It's not a misunderstanding, I replied. It's a system. I gathered the folder and stood. Outside, the city kept moving. People carrying coffee. Cars honking. Ordinary noise. Inside me, something had gone very still. And I knew I wasn't guessing anymore. Dorothy walked me to the door, then surprised me by stopping halfway down the hall. Sit, she said, pointing back toward the kitchen. Not sharp, not urgent, just certain. So I did. She didn't pour more tea. She folded her hands instead, resting them on the table like she'd been practicing this moment longer than I realized. I need to tell you why I set the trust up the way I did. I nodded. My chest felt tight again, but not in the same way. This wasn't about money. Not really. After your father died, Dorothy continued, your mother changed, quietly, slowly. I told myself it was grief. I stared at a dark knot in the wood grain. Let her talk. She leaned on you, Dorothy said, and she shielded Lily. A pause. Long enough to breathe in. I watched you become the adult in that house. Too early. My jaw clenched. I didn't interrupt. I never had. The trust wasn't a gift, Dorothy went on. It was a correction. That landed harder than anything else she'd said. A correction. I repeated. Yes, I saw what your mother refused to see. Or maybe what she chose not to. Dorothy's voice didn't shake. I wanted something in writing that couldn't be argued away later. Later came faster than either of us expected. I slid the folder back toward her. She used your structure. Your rules. Dorothy nodded. She found the blind spot. We sat with that for a moment. My phone vibrated again. This time it was Lily. I answered before I could stop myself. Evelyn. Lily's voice rushed out. Why are you doing this? Doing what? You left Mom spiraling. She barely slept. I closed my eyes, counted to 2. My credit is ruined. My name is on a loan I never approved. That's not the point. There it was. The point is family. Lily continued. You're making this ugly. It was already ugly. Lily exhaled sharply. You always do this. You turn everything into a courtroom. Dorothy watched me carefully as I listened. I could feel her attention without looking. I didn't ask for any of this. I said finally, I just stopped pretending. Lily scoffed. You don't even need a house like that. You're alone. The word hung between us. We noticed how quiet the room became then. Even the building seemed to hold its breath. I'm hanging up, I told her. We'll talk when you're ready to be honest. She didn't respond before the line went dead. Dorothy let out a slow breath. That's what your mother taught her. Taught her what? That needing less means you deserve less. I leaned back in my chair. The wood creaked again. Same sound as before. So the trust. I said. It was supposed to give me footing. Yes, Dorothy replied. Not permission for someone else to stand on you. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. Firm. Present. I won't undo what she did, she said, but I will stop it. I stood, sliding the folder into my bag. The weight of it felt different now, not heavier, sharper. At the door, Dorothy spoke again. Whatever you decide next, I'll support it. I nodded, because that was all I could manage. Outside, the cold air hit my face and stayed there. The trust wasn't the end of this. It was the beginning of clarity. I drove to Westport on a gray afternoon when the traffic was light enough to think, not because I needed to see the house in person, because my body needed confirmation my mind already had. The address was easy to find. Wide street, manicured lawns, trees trimmed back like they'd never known neglect. I parked across the street and stayed in the car for a minute, hands resting in my lap, watching a woman walk her dog past the driveway like this was just another normal Tuesday. The house was bigger than the photos, white siding, tall windows, the kind of place people describe as peaceful when they mean expensive. Lily's car sat in the driveway. I didn't go up to the door. I pulled the folder from my bag and opened it on the passenger seat. Property registry, mortgage documents, addendum pages I hadn't fully processed before. My name appeared again. Limited guarantor. That meant something very specific. It meant when things went wrong, the bank knew exactly where to look. My phone rang. My mother. I let it ring twice before answering. Evelyn, Margaret said, breathless. Where are you? Out. This isn't funny. I'm in Westport. A pause. Then, sharp. Why? I wanted to see what my life paid for. Her voice dropped. You're twisting things. I'm reading them. You always do this, she snapped. You overanalyze. You turn help into accusations. I stared at the house. The front door opened. Lily stepped out. Sunglasses on. Phone in hand. Is that her? Lily called out in the background. Tell her to leave. Margaret didn't answer her. We did what made sense. For who? For the family. I laughed quietly. You mean Lily? She needed stability, and I didn't. You didn't need rescuing, Margaret shot back. You've always landed on your feet. The sentence hit harder than she knew. We noticed how the words came out smoother for her then, like she'd rehearsed them long before this call. I didn't land, I replied. I was pushed and told to be grateful I didn't fall harder. Lily started walking toward the car. Her steps slowed when she realized I wasn't getting out. Evelyn, she called, tapping on the glass. This is dramatic. I rolled the window down halfway. That loan, I said, keeping my voice even. I didn't agree to it. Lily shrugged. Mom said you'd understand. Margaret's voice cut in. Stop interrogating her. I'm not interrogating anyone. I answered. I'm confirming. Lily's mouth tightened. You're really doing this. I met her eyes. You really lived in it. Silence followed. Not stunned. Defensive. Margaret spoke again, slower now. If you push this, you'll break the family. I looked at the house one last time. The porch light was on, even though it wasn't dark yet. I didn't build this. I said, you did. I ended the call. Lily stepped back. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked at me like she'd swallowed something bitter. I started the engine and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, the house stayed exactly where it was, solid, untouched. Inside me, something shifted, not rage, ownership, and I understood, finally, that what they took wasn't just money. It was the assumption that my consent didn't matter. I didn't go home after Westport. I went back to my office, shut the door, and sat on the floor with my back against the file cabinet like I'd run out of furniture that made sense. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my mother or Lily. Evelyn. Julian's voice came through, cautious but warm. You still up? I am. I answered. I need help. There was a pause, then a chair scraping in the background. Tell me what you've got. I talked. Not fast, not emotional, just facts. Trust records, credit damage, a house I didn't own but somehow paid for. Julian listened without interrupting. This isn't sloppy, he said finally. This is planned. I need proof of that. Another pause. Then I'll look for proof of intent. He came by the next morning with 2 coffees and a hard drive. Set both down like they carried the same weight. I pulled backups from an old laptop your mother synced to the family cloud years ago, he said. Still accessible. She never changed the credentials. That felt right. My mother never believed anyone would look. We went through the files together, emails, drafts, spreadsheets with names that tried to sound harmless. One folder stood out. Dream Reset. Julian clicked it open. Inside were notes, timelines, a list labeled talking points. I leaned closer. She's single. She won't notice. She doesn't need space like Lily does. If questioned, say it's temporary. My throat tightened. She rehearsed this. Julian nodded. There's more. He pulled up a message thread. My mother's name. Lily's. Lily. What if Evelyn finds out? Margaret. She won't. She never checks her own credit. She trusts me. We noticed how quiet the room became when she read that line. Not shocked. Just emptied. Julian watched my face. You okay? I'm clear. That was the truth. Whatever fog had been there was gone. We kept going. A scanned driver's license. Altered. My name. Lily's photo. Another document showing a notary appointment scheduled weeks before the trust transfer. Julian leaned back. This isn't desperation. It's design. My phone lit up on the desk. A text from my mother. We need to talk. You're taking this too far. I stared at it, then placed the phone face down. Julian followed my gaze. Family. Yes. I replied. That's what she calls it. I stood and walked to the window. The city moved the same way it always had. People carrying bags. Cars double parked. Nothing stopping. I don't want to explode this. I said. I want it documented. Julian nodded. Then we do it clean. Timelines. Originals. No gaps. I turned back to him. I want everything. He slid the hard drive closer. You already have it. I picked it up. It was lighter than I expected. That was the strange part. Once I saw how deliberate it all was, the weight shifted. It stopped feeling personal and started feeling provable. My mother called it a dinner. She said she wanted to clear the air, start fresh. New year, new tone. She asked everyone to come early, before the weather turned. She even used my name in the group text, like that alone proved sincerity. I arrived on time. So did Dorothy. The dining table was set like a small performance. Candles, linen napkins, wine already breathing. Lily sat close to Margaret, their shoulders nearly touching. Evelyn, my mother greeted too brightly. I'm glad you came. Dorothy took the chair at the end of the table without asking permission. I waited until plates were filled and the room settled into that polite hum families use to avoid saying the wrong thing. I brought something, I said, standing. I clicked the remote once. The screen behind me lit up. Clean. Simple. No drama. A timeline. Dates. Transfers. Names. Margaret's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What is this? She asked. Voice tight. Documentation. I replied. Nothing personal. Lily laughed, sharp and short. You're projecting slides now. The next image appeared. The trust distribution. My name. The amount spelled out. $3.2 million. Dorothy spoke then, calm and steady. This was authorized for Evelyn. I confirmed it myself. Margaret pushed her chair back. You don't understand the pressure I was under. I clicked again. The beneficiary account, notification address. Her house. We noticed how her voice shifted there. We'd say later. Less confident. Still controlled. You opened an account without my knowledge. I continued. You moved the funds. You tied my credit to a loan I never approved. Lily stood. You're blowing this up. You didn't even want a house like that. I didn't want my name used. I answered. Dorothy rose slowly. I've already notified the bank and the authorities. Your trustee access ends tonight. Silence spread across the table. Heavy, final. Margaret's eyes found mine. If you do this, there's no going back. I nodded once. I know. No one raised their voice after that. There was nothing left to add. The house is quiet now. Not empty. Just settled. Dorothy sits by the window most afternoons, a blanket over her knees, a book she keeps forgetting to read. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. Both feel fine. The Westport place is gone. I sold it without walking through one last time. That chapter didn't need a goodbye. What mattered wasn't the house. It was the space it stopped taking up in my head. My credit is clean again. My work feels steady. When my phone rings, I know who it's for. That used to matter less. Now it doesn't. Dorothy said something once, pouring tea too carefully. You didn't harden. You clarified. That stayed with me. Evelyn Harper doesn't mistake endurance for consent anymore. I don't confuse silence with peace. I don't need to be chosen to choose myself. Some stories end with noise. This one ended with quiet. If any part of it felt familiar, you already know why it mattered.